One of the challenges with large models like GPT is that their knowledge is limited to the time at which they were trained. And so here I'm asking it a question about a Hyundai Ioniq 6, a car which did not exist until June 2023, and GPT has no idea how to answer this question. Within Azure AI Studio, we now have the ability to set up retrieval augmented generation, or RAG, quite simply. And so here I will add a data source. And that data source I have pre-prepared with Azure AI Search. And in my search engine, I have added the manual for the Hyundai Ioniq 6. And in fact, I have vector indexed it, which we'll get to in just a moment. So I'll set this up. And just like that, any question I give it will now automatically search that search index and return a response like so, complete with a reference to the section of the manual from which it picked up this information. Now, because I used vector search, it becomes language independent. And that means that I can ask the same question even in Spanish. And it gives me the correct response also in Spanish, even though I only indexed English data. One publicly facing deployment that's available now is the New York City My City chatbot. In here, I can ask all kinds of questions about how to start or run a business in New York City. And this is grounded to New York City's data. And of course, this too is multilingual because it's using vector search and the multilingual model that is GPT-4. So chat.nyc.gov used Azure OpenAI and your data to create this conversational AI for its constituents. But how did they test this to make sure that it was going to behave safely when they exposed it? Let's take a look at the evaluation capabilities of Azure AI Studio. Now, certainly there is the ad hoc capability that's built into prompt flow and built into the Azure OpenAI playground. And so here I can just make a question like I did earlier. How do I activate the heated seats? And it gives me the response. So that's ad hoc testing. But now we might want to evaluate that at scale. And for that purpose, we have the Evaluation Studio. So I will create a new evaluation here. I'm going to create a full evaluation using a large data set that I have of questions that might go to my Hyundai conversational AI. Now, this conversational AI is using RAG, and so I'll turn it on for question and answer pairs with retrieval augmented generation. And I will evaluate the very Hyundai flow that you saw earlier. Now here I can choose which metrics I would like it to calculate. And it uses GPT to evaluate some of these metrics. So for example, it's using GPT to evaluate for each sentence, is this sentence actually grounded in the search results? I'll choose all three metrics and I'll add a new data set. And that imports my data set, a whole bunch of questions and ground truths. Now I will map these to the input columns, and I map the answer to the model's reply, and I submit the run. A few minutes later, my run is complete. Now I can take a look at it. And here I see how my data performed. So on the groundedness scale, most of my stuff was a 5. And that means that every claim in the reply was substantiated by a search result. Relevance is a measure of how well and how completely it answered the question. And retrieval score is a measure of whether the search engine actually did retrieve results for the question at hand. It's worth noting you don't always want a retrieval score of 5. For example, if you were to make a query for it that's completely out of domain, like if I asked my Hyundai conversational AI to tell me about the Greek island of Santorini, that should give 0 search results. And so you want some of these ones for your negative test set. And I can also compare my evaluation runs on the same flow. And so here I made 2 different evaluations, a full one and a smaller test set. And we see that we got different properties between them. So as I change this test set, or as I change the model and the prompts and the underlying flow, I can compare the new to the old to determine whether it improved my results. These are the kinds of tools that our customers use to validate that their AI is behaving safely and responsibly.